In a world where everyone's chasing speed, few people actually understand scale. We hear a lot about AI, automation, systems, but the truth is, most people are building faster, not smarter. Today, we're sitting down with someone who's made a career out of solving that exact problem. Having a conversation with Paul Malott, founder and CEO of Automations 24. Today, we're at the Boyd Innovation Center in Columbia, South Carolina, where ideas turn into action and the next generation of leaders are being shaped in real time. And this is the Fail Fast Founder Spotlight. So before we get into Automation 24, and before the doctorate and everything, when did you realize you didn't want to go down a normal career path? Is there a moment for you?
It wasn't a realization more than it was like a door closing in my face.
Yeah.
Right. I had an awesome 20-year career that was, I was blessed to have in procurement and supply chain. I had the opportunity to work for General Motors for a few years and as a buyer, and then Harman as a director of procurement and product sourcing. And like any big organization, at some point they restructure. And I was unfortunately or fortunately recalibrated out of the organization. I thought that was an interesting way to introduce the idea that you're getting shit canned. But the reality was I was let go after I upped and moved my family down here, right? And it was this kind of light bulb that came on, like, okay, well, I have a skill set. Maybe my skill set isn't best within the confines of the organizations I've been working with. But that's not to say that let's not discount the massive amounts of experience you just got.
Right.
But how can you apply that experience more in line with what my skill set is? And that's really process management. It's digital organization or digital resource orchestration. And that moment where it just went, okay, I'm not doing what I could be doing as good as I could be doing it. And so I made that commitment to bet on myself, right?
Yeah.
And bet on what I could do as a business owner. And really, so that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And now, thankfully, everything's been successful since then. So.
Wow. So you 20 years.
20 years, then kicked to the curb and said, okay, I'm going to do this, on my own. But what I realized quickly, like we talked about, was I couldn't do it all on my own, right?
Yeah.
I have a particular skill set that's commercially oriented, that's very much strategy, and I needed somebody who, could get in the trenches and really execute these crazy visions and ideas that I have, right? And, so I was lucky enough through my network to find a co-founder, a CTO, and a mentor / chairperson for Automations 24, and they really helped me take it to the next level.
Nice. Now you mentioned, the 20 years, you go through 20 years, you get unfortunately canned.
Yep.
How long in that process did it take you to get to kind of like where you're going now with Automation 24? How long? Is there a gap?
I think, treating myself like I treat my company, it's ever evolving, right? And I think Automations 24 will continue to adapt and become something different tomorrow than it is today. And I think it needs to be competitive in today's, highly competitive AI-mediated market. It's brutal out there. So the idea of, being static and having some like moment of realization, it really wasn't like that. It's a constant, bubble that continues to expand, and more or less a cycle that we continue to go through of unlearning things we've learned how to do and finding out that there's different and more efficient and effective ways to get to point B than we thought previously. So it's really something I would just say, like, we're always trying to forget what we remembered because there's an advantage to the problem solving that comes with that, right?
Actually, that's very, very, very true. So I think the advantage you mentioned there, I want you to talk a little bit on it, but we're seeing, I think in real time, so much change happening in the marketplace, in the market right now. And the ability, like you said, to unlearn the things that we've done because we've done it this way for so long. What advantages are you seeing for organizations that are reframing that mindset?
Well, agility right now is paramount for organizations to be able to seize the opportunities that they're sensing, right? So part of what I study at the University of Michigan in their doctoral program is digital resource orchestration. And the essence of digital resource orchestration is sensing the signals digitally, more or less, that come from the outside environment, internal to the firm or your organization, and then bundling those signals in such a way that the organization uses that information to make effective and efficient decisions, right? And effective and efficient really means, are you aligned to the value add that your firm is trying to deliver?
Right.
If you can align to that, right, then you're spot on. The problem is companies get static. They stop the process of learning, they stop the process of continuous improvement, or they didn't even have a process to learn or facilitate learning and adapting in their company. So really the companies that are able to learn and able to adapt, they're taking advantage of that sensing and that bundling of that opportunity, right? And converting that opportunity into a sound decision rather than reacting to the market.
Absolutely. You mentioned stagnation in organizations. What do you think is causing most of the stagnation? Is it the people, the processes, the data? Like where are you seeing the most? Where's the bottleneck?
No, that's a phenomenal question. I think most organizations today, they have a culmination of issues, right? It's systems that are in place that are bloated. They have 15 modules when they only need 2, right? Or only 2 are in full use, and there's shadow processes that are occurring in the background that nobody knows about, right? There's that story about Microsoft where they adopted SAP, but their finance team still used an Excel file to process all the data, right? So those things happen in organizations, and the bigger organizations get, the more frequently they happen, right? And that's the kind of thing that doesn't just put a stick in the spokes of the bicycle tire that's the firm. It really causes upstream and downstream decision impacts that what they do is they muddy the water, right?
Yeah.
So your leadership never really gets a clear picture of the best decision they can make at that point in time with the information that's available, right? So it's a combination of people employing shadow processes, systems being used for non-value add activities. And what it means is a lot of chasing and a lot of cyclical crap, right, that goes on in companies. And unfortunately it becomes bureaucracy, and it becomes this cycle that companies have to deal with. The best companies, they have a culture that allows for that stuff to surface as soon as possible, right? And that culture really is dependent on solid processes to back up what learning means for the company, what it means to change, what it means to recognize a failure or recognize that this is an edge case and we should be managing that edge case in a certain way, right? Surfacing those things sooner and approaching them better with the idea that you're going to solve that problem and bring it to resolution, that's really where companies strive, right? It's resolution orientation, not necessarily getting stuck in that ways, right? Getting stuck in that stagnated way of doing things outside of it because that's how we did it, right?
Right.
We know things are changing so fast, and it is a moment, I think, that we're realizing slowly that we're in, but it's happening so fast that, you know, nobody realizes the fall of Rome. Nobody, when Rome was falling, knew that it was falling. You know what I mean? And historians still try to point to a moment when exactly when did Rome fall? Well, it's the same kind of thing, but from a business perspective here today. The processes that our businesses are reliant upon have changed, right? And the startups today, they're not using the same processes that old companies were using that was once successful, right? They're using something completely different. And if those older companies cannot change, they have a much farther battle than I think they even realize today to catch up to the startups that are already using these efficient and effective micro tools to get from point A to point B way faster, right?
So your experience in the industry and where you see things trending for organizations, how is Automation 24 enabling organizations through digital transformation?
Well, it's all about the alignment of people, processes, and information, right? And aligning those to the value add of the organization, like we alluded to earlier. Companies, like I mentioned, have these processes in place that are meant to satisfy a client. Maybe they're meant to satisfy an end user, but they may not be doing it in the right way, right? And so the companies that are reflective on this, And usually they're relying on us to bring that outside perspective, right? To help them unlearn how they've been doing things.
Right.
Those are the companies that are going to be able to succeed with Automations 24, because we're coming in, we're basically, the way we operate, we do a discovery. So the first thing we do before we try to improve anything is understand the context that the company is operating in. And that means understand everything.
Right.
What do people not know today that happens that they should be aware of? What system is in use that shouldn't necessarily be in use for this particular use case?
Right.
And then we break it down into, well, what can we do that's low-hanging fruit that has value add? What can we do that's going to save money today? What can we do that's going to deliver the product faster? So, being able to take a holistic view, or think of yourself as a senator from your business unit, but representing the entire organization when you're in these meetings, that's crucial, because you're considering all of the opportunities that are existing within that particular problem you're trying to solve, right? Rather than just being an IT guy or a supply chain guy at the table. Yes, you have to respect what it is you're there to do, which is, if I'm a buyer, buy things good, or if I'm a sourcer, find the best, cheapest source at the right time. But you still have to respect the value that the business is trying to deliver.
Right. I want to move forward and ask a little bit about Automation 24 specifically, and the organizations that you're working with, and what organizations you foresee that are most adept and ready for this, the change that you're presenting. But before that, I wanted to touch on your procurement and sourcing background, how much that influenced the direction and the vision that you have for this organization. Because I hear it keeps coming up.
I'm a proud procurement guy. I think I have this. I'm biased for procurement because I think that procurement is like a mini CEO. You represent your organization. You spend your organization's money, and you represent your organization in very heated moments of negotiation and discussion about pennies in most cases, right? I mean, I have particular examples negotiating $350 million contracts, across the table as a 25-year-old, right? Across the table from VPs at tier 1 companies that are Fortune 500s, trying to get them to give me 5 cents on a bill of material that's, $300, right? So that amount of scrutiny and level of detail that you have to be persistent in reaching as a purchasing agent, as a buyer, as a procurement manager, I think that really brings an understanding to process, right? Yes. Bill of processes, bill of material, how widgets get put together.
Yeah.
That I take a lot of pride in, because you have to understand what it is you're buying before you can make a commitment on what you're going to buy.
Absolutely. To take it back, I wanted you to touch on this as well, because most people don't think about technology or innovation when they think about supply chain or procurement and sourcing.
Sure.
Or supply chain. Behind the scenes, you see that differently. How close is that gap? Is there a closer gap than people realize?
Oh, it's one. I mean, it probably depends on industry, right?
Yeah,
in my experience, which is in automotive primarily, the procurement team and the engineering teams are hand in hand in every battle, every negotiation, every hot topic that pops up, every commercial topic, because value engineering is a hot topic for everything, right? Assuming that the component that I'm given is designed to cost, right? Designed in the best way possible, to be manufactured in the most efficient and effective way, to be cost effective.
Right.
That's a bad assumption. That's going to make an ass out of you and me.
Yeah.
So a lot of the dialogue in companies, is between the buyer and the engineer internally before the package even goes to the supply chain. And then when the package hits the supply chain, you're pressing that supply chain for process improvements on their assembly lines. You're pressing them for SG&A reductions because you don't believe they should have 3 admins managing the ERP system in the background for your HVAC module. But all these things, in my experience, have built this incredible respect for what it means to respect processes in companies, and how much processes help and support quality products, right? Both physically, like a product like this glass of water, for example, and digitally, like the amount of effort that has to go into designing to cost is just as crucial as buying a part at the effective, lowest cost possible.
So I love that you brought processes into this, because I talked to a lot of other founders about systems thinking. Right?
Oh yeah, how are you?
How important is system thinking and processes and refining processes and identifying bottlenecks? And how did your understanding of systems thinking affect your current venture into the world of automations and AI?
You are talking to probably one of the most process-oriented people in business today. I really believe that it's hyper important for organizations to create a process that facilitates the opportunity for their employees to do what is necessary for the business to be successful. I think if a business doesn't have a process in place that essentially provides the guardrails for the employees to do their job, they're missing a crucial point, to be a company. Processes help establish company culture. They also help establish boundaries. But as we talked about earlier, they can also lead to stagnation. So the second part of your question, how important is it to revise and continue to look at it? It's essential to have a center of excellence in your business that is constantly looking at the way that you're doing business and looking for ways to do it different. And it's even more essential today when we get into an AI-mediated environment where signals that we're receiving from the macro environment are already, parsed by AI agents, fed to your 3 team members, and then parsed again before it gets to you, right? The process by which you are consolidating and aggregating that information is critical to the quality of the decision that you're going to make as a leader. So it's paramount, in my opinion, to have processes that are respected, if processes are happening outside of the normal day-to-day, you need to understand it, respect it, and try your best to industrialize it and institutionalize it, because there's ultimately somebody doing something that the customer's asking for, that they need to do to deliver, and it means you're missing the point as a company if you're not encompassing that in your standard operating procedure, right? And that's not to say that you shouldn't build a process thinking everything's going to be perfect,
right?
Because Murphy's Law, right? And I would define failure as like the second Murphy's Law, where something, if something could go wrong, it will. And then the second Murphy's Law is not being prepared for that thing to go wrong, right? So you build a process to manage the edge cases. What that means is you're planning for every failure first, and then you're giving the people the tools to manage that failure accordingly.
Right. Okay. So as you just mentioned, systems do fail. Systems
all the time. People, and they generally fail because of ambiguity, right? And it could be ambiguity about how to use the tool, or ambiguity about who should be the owner of this particular deliverable, right? But that ambiguity tends to drive these failures, in my experience, more than anything, right? And so you get in front of that as a business owner, as a CEO, as a leader, by strategizing for those failures, for the ambiguity, and doing your best to be prepared.
Absolutely. Okay, so you talked about systems failing, ambiguity being one of the many reasons why. What did this teach you about real-world execution behind the scenes, as far as how organizations execute processes and systems?
I think when it comes to organizations, this is the reason why we do discovery first at Automations 24. Organizations and leaders in organizations at any level of the organization, C-suite, corner office with the Mercedes, or back office where there's no lights, they don't know everything that they don't know, right? And so discovery and being fresh to the experience of what it is to be in utilities, or what it is to be in e-commerce, and coming in with this blank slate and driving out questions and inquiries that they haven't heard, because they haven't had to address that, because it's not day to day. Those things, getting the teams to think about how to deliver things differently is crucial for adopting technology today, because no technology is effective just putting it on top of the way that your company operates today. And I think a lot of companies today think that, adopting AI is like getting a chatbot or using Claude Code, but it's really not that. It's right. It's building it into a workflow. It's building AI into the decision-making process, and then controlling how that AI is using that information, so that, again, you're maintaining the quality of the information as it goes from signal through to whatever it is you're trying to massage it into, right? So when you're going and you're looking to adopt technology, it's not about where can we put it today or what do we have to do. It's try to understand how you're delivering your value first, then take baby steps when adapting it. Because what I find is most companies look for automation first before they look for AI, because they have just an understanding of artificial intelligence that is, like it's a magic wand or something. But the reality is there's several different types of artificial intelligence, and some are more useful than others, right? I find that we do a lot of OCR work, right, which is essentially document reading. I can't remember the fancy term for it, but it's essentially using AI to read and parse documentation. It's a PDF or physical handwriting, and we do a lot of that because it's effective, it works well, and it saves a boatload of time from somebody trying to understand what this says and then go to these 6 systems, right? So, but first, people don't know that they're in 6 systems. The leadership team knows it gets done. They have the metrics that they've been marching to. They have the moonshot goals that they're trying to achieve. But rarely do they take the moment and look at the entirety of the situation. Like the senator, representing the state and representing the U.S. as they come in to the conversation. It has to be that approach. Otherwise, you're going to have fragmented implementation, and that's even more dangerous, because now you have things that you can't address as quickly because you don't know every situation that could come out of it, right? Where you at least know how to talk to a human, you know what kind of situations can come up and you can work through it with them. Now you have to get a developer involved, and no offense to developers, but they take your word literally when you're scoping something out, right?
Task-oriented.
Very task-oriented. So, you have this task-oriented problem resolution now with a problem you can't fix as fast as when you could have fixed it beforehand. So discover what it is you're doing first before you try to go and implement something.
I love that. The things I can pull from that immediately is, obviously you mentioned that a lot of organizations are getting it wrong about automation and AI. Finish this, or craft the sentence, if you will. AI is and AI isn't.
AI is an amplifier, right? And it amplifies both high-performing processes and poorly performing processes, right? And it is not a catch-all, be-all. And it's the idea that 10 years ago, companies would buy an SAP, and the SAP would come cookie cutter with the 27 modules you needed. And you'd figure out how to configure it accordingly and try to fit it into your business in whatever way it could fit. It's not like that anymore, right? But you still have to find the right use case for the right type of AI, whether it's a large language model or OCR like we talked about. You have to use the right use cases, because it's not a magic wand, and it is an amplifier. And if you put it on the wrong use case, you're going to amplify your problems, and that is probably not what any business owner or CEO wants to do.
Okay. So, obviously through your work with organizations, I've seen you discuss about scaling through chaos. What does chaos actually look like inside these organizations? Can you touch on that a little?
It's like having a guy with a snowblower on one side of a building, blowing all the snow at every open window and door to close it as soon as possible, right? But on the other side, there's another guy with just as powerful snowblower blowing the same. So chaos is essentially not knowing what's going to happen, right? But being prepared, as prepared as you can to react to those propositions, right, that are being placed in front of you. And I would describe chaos as opportunity more than I would the potential for failure, right? Chaos is always an opportunity to fail forward, and it's just always an opportunity for these companies to more or less harness what they've got present, what they've been presented, and do things differently, right? It always presents an opportunity in that regard, rather than a stopping block. Because what I find is chaos gives people something to rise above, right? And when you, and especially when you're working in smaller companies and supporting smaller organizations through transformation, when they encounter chaos and get through it, it's something that they can champion, right? And it becomes a good example for forward thinking, for progress over perfection.
Right. So you talked about failing forward and using chaos as an opportunity, right? What from your experience, what have you observed that enables an organization who can adapt and adopt, automation, AI, or whatever technological solution, from those that can't? Is there a common thread?
So it's the willingness to fail and fail fast, right? It's the willingness to take on the challenge and understand that the grass isn't always greener on the other side, right? And the willingness to try for the sake of continuous improvement and progress. I think there are too many companies, and what defines really companies that become stagnant are the ones that get stuck in the status quo. And they start believing that the way that they've been doing things, is appropriate. And it could be the right use case for it, right? It could be the appropriate thing. It could be an effective thing they're doing. But if they aren't willing to challenge themselves to do it differently or better, they're inevitably going to get stuck.
Now we've discussed automation 24, AI. Let's get a little bit into you as a founder, right? So you founded a company, Automation 24, in your doctoral program. What does your day-to-day look like? On top of being a family man, by the way.
Chaos, man. Yeah, it's chaos. And I strive off of having things to do. There are people like me who like to be busy. I like to be busy, but I also like to put quality work in. And I think, one of the things that I had to learn is to set aside the appropriate amount of time for everything that I'm doing, and learn how to manage having 10 balls in the air at once.
Yeah.
So that I could put forth the type of quality that I wanted to, right? But I think, as a founder, the key thing that I think every founder has is this drive to continue doing something better, right? And continue to learn and do that. And it was really painful coming out of corporate world, being really good at procurement and doing, being a star in some cases and saving the money, saving company money. And when you get to that point and you try to refresh yourself as a founder constantly, that's challenging, right?
Yeah.
But to not take yourself so seriously is another thing. So my day-to-day really looks like me trying to first and foremost be a family man, right? Be there for the people that are both inside my company, our family, and inside my home, right? And so I think doing that and taking care of my people is number one. Absolutely. And you do that, everything else kind of, down at the end of the waterfall, it seems to make sense.
Yeah.
Day-to-day of a founder is a lot of business development too, Something that was a different hat I had to put on from the career. It's go out and sell and learn how to sell and not be afraid to, sell yourself. And it sounds funny saying that, but not be afraid to have confidence in your skill set that you're bringing to the table, because it is a lot more pressure on you when you're bringing it to the table and you don't have the umbrella that is a General Motors to protect whatever ego you've got, right? So it's a balance of meditating on your ego daily, right?
Yeah, no, I was going to take it there actually. You ego, you got the security, the blanket of the tenured career that you've had, and then for that to seemingly be pulled from you, which I'm sure at the time had to be a mental
toll.
Sucks.
Yeah, it's a kick in the nuts.
And then you jump into entrepreneurship, which is another kick in the nuts, another mental toll. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the behind the scenes? What do most people don't see about founders? C-suite level people that you're constantly, quite frankly, getting kicked in the nuts.
Success is a lot of kicks, and it's a lot of kicks, and it's being willing to take it, being willing to learn from those mistakes, right, and do your best to fail forward, and accept that failures don't mean you're going to die tomorrow, right? It doesn't mean the end of the world. It means you've been presented with a learning opportunity. And I think, as a founder, you're presented with thousands more learning opportunities than you are when you're, in the confines of the protection of whatever the company it is you're working for, right? You have to be willing to put on the HR hat one day and the business development hat another day and the procurement hat another day to negotiate your first contract. Those things are all these big moments for you. And I always expected after, accomplishing something big too, that like balloons would come from the sky and confettis or something would, like celebrate with me. But, that's another thing is like, learn to celebrate your wins as a founder. They are few and far between. The scope is never understood when you do get the win, but generally it's bigger than you think it is. It's putting you on the trajectory you've been wanting to go on. And, take the moment to give yourself the pat on the back, because it is hard to continue to trudge through the trenches and do what you think is right,
Yeah, no, yeah. Speaking like mental toll there, like I think for me personally as a founder, you get so entrenched in the day-to-day work, like you said, you lose the vision, you lose the looking back in hindsight, how far you've come and the things you have accomplished.
It's really easy to, because you're looking at every day, from both a strategic perspective and from that, like, I'm in the trenches. Yeah. I have to be tactical. I have to do these 10 things to make this client happy. And balancing that is very unique to a CEO, C-suite, founder. That balance is, and it's almost impossible to keep it, right? Because one day you're super strategy and you have to put that other hat on. The next day, and get in and do something maybe you didn't want to do, like cold call people, right? But those things are what are going to separate you from, the founders. And unfortunately, the 80% of companies that start up and in the next year, they're not there anymore. Yeah. It's being consistent and persistent in accomplishing your goals, I think, that are going to set you apart, more or less.
How much then do you believe, as a founder, is the success of a founder attributed to, their adept just ability, or their born ability or their born talents, versus their persistence or consistency?
That's a really good question. I know a lot of really silly, very successful people, right? And I know a lot of really smart, unsuccessful people, And I think that can be attributed to what you're talking about there. It's the persistence and the drive to accomplish something, right? And waking up, even when you don't feel like waking up, at 6 a.m. and doing those 10 emails before you go and hop in the shower, right? I think, I put it right in the middle. It's 50-50, nature, nurture, right? Because, rare talent is hard to find. You can always also learn how to do things too,
That's
right?
So true.
And that's where I think entrepreneurs are also, the successful entrepreneurs and business people are the ones who are constantly learning new skills and how to do things differently. But they're also generalists, right? I would say the most successful people I know are not incredibly skilled at anything. They're more or less jack of all trades. And that enables them to be really adept at problem solving.
So obviously then mindset obviously plays a huge part in success, or founder success. What would you say specifically in your industry, right? Automation, technology, AI. What mindset does someone need to have if they want to be a founder or an entrepreneur in this space?
Progress over perfection.
That's my saying.
I love that saying. I just learned it like a month ago.
Really?
I mean, literally just started applying it a month ago, because I have this perfectionist attitude towards things. And I think, like I said, a lot of entrepreneurs want to put the most perfect thing out there.
Right.
And, the reality is, it's never going to be what you imagined it to be in the beginning. And that's probably better. That's probably for the better. So, when I think of progress over perfection, especially in the digital space, it means understanding that everything is going to be different tomorrow, right? You can build an integration, you could put the mesh on top of the legacy systems and solve the problem today, And it's ideal for a consultant like us, but tomorrow there's going to be something we can do better. And if we come in with that attitude, I think we're going to be okay.
Absolutely. A project goes well,
Yep.
or deal closes. You celebrate how?
Party with my friends, man. Party with the friends being the team.
Yeah.
Yep, get the team together, make sure they know that we succeeded.
Yeah.
And we know that they were a part of that success. They know that they were a part of that success.
What's one purchase you made recently, or not so recently, that genuinely changed your life?
Oh, that's so bad, man. 3D printer.
3D printer.
Yep.
What do you use it for?
3D printing things for the 3D printer.
I'll take it.
No, I mean seriously, like it's like when you buy a motorcycle. I never owned a motorcycle or like tweaked a motorcycle, you know. But I always looked at people doing that and thought, wow, they really like their motorcycle.
Yeah.
You know, you buy a 3D printer, you realize the things you can print are like for your 3D printer to make it look cooler and quieter and whatever. You know, I come from a manufacturing background with automotive, so like you know, 3D printer, the idea of you can take an STL file, play with it, print anything. You know, I can make toys for my kids that they don't care about. My wife hates plastic, so it was a terrible choice. But like for me, it was a great buy.
Yeah.
It occupies, but it's good for patients too because it takes 12 hours to print shit sometimes.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it's.
Well, you're always going back to that procurement and sourcing background, man. You can't get away from it.
Yeah, I'm interested. It's the design stuff. You know, it's like you know, I had a career. I was a program manager before I was procurement at GM. And I was designing hose, like for cars, you know.
Yeah.
But like in that, I'm not a designer. You know what I mean? I had no idea how to work CAD, but I had to learn like ED, G, and T, geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, and like what it all meant for hose. So like you know, I became very adept at hose designing.
Okay.
You know, so that kind of like plays into 3D printing because it's extruded plastic more or less, just like hoses are extruded, so it's kind of my nerdy little thing.
Guilty pleasure. Okay.
Yeah, when you see me on the Zoom calls or like you know Google Meets, there's my 3D printer
right behind you.
Yeah, man. I usually got it like building some stupid boat or you know something I'm gonna blow up.
It's building something as you're.
Yeah. Why not? I'm telling you, man. You know what it did? It brought me into the hobby of like Dungeons and Dragons and like you know Warhammer and stuff because you can print terrain.
Oh.
So I started making like, you know, little forts. it's so
You just
stupid.
nerd out with these.
Yeah, dude, I turned into a huge nerd because of a 3D printer.
You turned into a nerd because of the printer, or you're already a nerd?
I think it just brought it out. It amplified it, like
go.
AI amplifies things,
There
problems.
you go. Hey.
It amplified my problems.
Okay. There we go. What environment do you do your best thinking in?
Oh man, honestly, chaos. Where there's a lot going on, where we have to move forward, and the demand for a decision is, you know, imminent.
Okay. If you had a year full of no obligations, what would you build?
Oh man, I'd build an application for my wife.
Why? What would it do?
I don't know. She's been asking me to build applications for a long time, and one she wants is for me to build something between like a ThreadUp and a Poshmark, where she can post everything all at once on one simple thing. It's her idea.
Okay.
Her idea. She got it.
Yeah.
Trademark.
Yep.
Paul Malott and co. You know, but you know, I'd build something for her.
Okay.
Something that she actually likes.
No, that's actually
Not some 3D printed shit.
Not something. Yeah. Okay. You just created another obligation for yourself, though.
I might be a rapper. Honestly, though, if I was like, I would want to start a rap career.
Really?
Yeah, DeTroof. TROOF.
The truth.
Yeah, and I always wanted my mom to be famous, so like,
Really?
she'd be on the album cover, pointing her finger, and the album's "The Truth Be Told."
Okay. Well, is that the Detroit background that you said?
Yeah. Represent.
Okay. What does success look like to you now, compared to what it looked like 10 years ago?
Oh man, happiness, and I think happiness is really defined by me and the group of people that I'm close with and surrounded with. We're all comfortable with everything that's happening and what we're presented with, and we have opportunity.
Yeah. Okay.
10 years ago, I would have defined it as money, you know, just something simple, or defined it as like
how much money?
My baby, you know, son not crying at night, you know.
there. How much money? What was the dream? Everyone else has
the goal. You know,
was the number?
5 million was
$5 million?
5 million was the
That was
set
the
number.
that was the sunset.
That was
number.
I can run away from everything. I
Okay,
can
$5 million.
escape from the family in Mexico and
Hey.
that much money.
Well, you might need a little more than $5 million. Oh no.
I don't know where you go in Mexico.
Really?
I don't know. I'll find a place in the mountains.
Okay, fair enough.
Orizaba Mountains. Nobody will find me.
Yeah, so you're a mountains guy. Mountain, city, ocean. I was going to ask that.
Mountain, city, ocean. I probably would hang mountains on the beach. Mountains near
Mountains
the ocean.
on the beach. So
Yeah.
mountains and ocean.
Yeah, like Southern California look. You know, like where you're
okay.
overlooking the beach.
Southern Cal. Okay, not bad.
I like it. I don't know about Southern Cal just because Southern Cal, but
Yeah.
That's what I think of. Mountains and nice.
That's your dream oasis.
Yeah, I think so. I moved away from Detroit because I don't care for the snow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I also, my wife is from Poland, like born and raised over there, and I think I told her the weather was better in Michigan, and that was a total bullshit. 10 years, and she's like, she finally like accepted that I was lying.
Yeah, she's like.
Yeah. No, but the weather's better in
mountains
South
and beach
Carolina.
here.
Yeah, right, exactly. What do you do? The beaches are for a lake. What are you talking about? You know?
What's one habit that keeps you sharp mentally?
I read a lot. I read a lot of science fiction. I read a lot of scholarly articles that are absolutely boring, but I really like to read, and I like science fiction because it's kind of a bigger than thou most of the time, right? The books that I tend to gravitate to are like century-spanning books where multiple characters and stuff, but it gives you a different way of thinking about the world.
Oh,
So I'll always try to read every night
okay.
till I fall asleep.
Nice. So the nerdy background, I can see the science fiction and the white papers. That's the.
Yeah, they come
that's-
together, and
that's
that's
the-
where I'm a visionary. Ooh,
Nice.
No, but believe it or not, I played travel hockey, and I played junior B hockey when I was 16. So the rage lives.
Yeah.
The rage lives inside me, man. But people's fists were like as big as my face when I went junior. I couldn't keep up.
Yeah,
It was
I-
crazy, dude.
I-
Junior B is like get your ass kicked.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all you do.
Man, look, I play football here in the South.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Oh, yeah,
so
you know it, man.
They started getting bigger and faster and stronger.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, dude, I stopped growing when I was like 10, so that all backfired on me.
so you were a really tall 10-year-old.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, exactly. Real tall 10-year-old, and it all was like, what?
What the heck happened?
Yeah, and then on skates don't matter when you're, teeny guy, so
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But people have a hard time, I found, punching down.
Fair enough.
You can't get knocked out on the top of your head
Yeah,
so easy.
that's true. All right, so from your expertise, what skill will matter the most in the AI era?
Agility. The idea to be a jack of all trades. I think it's problem resolution orientation, problem solving, and you have to be able to put together, context and content in a way that works with all these AI mediated, these digital things. It's going to be a combination, in my opinion, of a lot of micro solutions that exist inside organizations, and those who can take the holistic view are gonna be better off because they're not gonna have to have, we'll say, the depth of experience in a particular problem, but more or less the breadth of experience in solving it.
Okay. And then the final question is, if you can go back and give yourself, a piece of advice or some guidance, what would you say? What would it be?
Be confident. Confidence is key, right? Just be confident in what you're doing. That's all. Be confident in who you are, what you're doing. I wish I had something different. I thought about that particular question a lot, and the real answer is nothing. I would leave myself in the dark.
Really?
I would.
Why?
Because I'd rather not know. Like, I'm really happy with how things have gone.
Yeah. You just figure it out.
Yeah, like, and it has.
Yeah.
Every time one door is closed, 10 other doors have opened. It's that whole like snowblower thing, and these people blowing the doors open and closed. It seems to work out like that for me. So embrace it, right?
Yeah.
Embrace what's coming at you and be confident in it.
Wow.
Paul, together
Thank you, man.
I appreciate it. It's been great.
It's been a pleasure having you on. We'll love to have you back on, and we look forward to seeing what you and Automation 24 have going in the future.
Been great. Please, thank you very much for having me on it.